Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're all well. My name is Vinayak, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to Internshape's brand new webinar on building a powerful resume. When I was at university, between my second year and my third year, I really started enjoying my part-time student-oriented jobs. The first job that I had was as a student ambassador of the university. I was giving campus tours, talking about the business school and its programs with visitors and helping them with the administration of on-campus events. However, this was far from the only part-time job that I took. And by the time my final year came around, I was teaching outreach business classes to high school students in the next city. I was doing promotional events for a local craft gin company, and I was growing organic vegetables in a student cooperative. So I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, which is also quite dark, and I apologize for the lighting right now. But I had a small attention span during this time and an even smaller idea of what I wanted to eventually do career-wise. So doing all of these different part-time jobs, this became more or less a full-time occupation for me. I was confident that any of my colleagues, fellow students, or even friends who saw me working at these part-time jobs could provide a good recommendation of my skills, my work ethic, and the value that I was adding to each organization that I was working with. So as I mentioned, I was confident that while I was doing all these part-time jobs, my colleagues, my friends, my fellow students, anyone who saw me working on these jobs could provide a good recommendation of my skills, my work ethic, and the value that I was bringing to these organizations. But I was also aware that as soon as I would approach anyone professionally for a career opportunity, they would immediately not know about any of this weird and varied work experience that I had done and any of the skills and experience I had acquired. There was a gap between what I perceived as my skills, my experience, my aptitude, and whatever any potential recruiter or employer knew about me or was looking for when they were hiring. And the story seems to be the same with young professionals everywhere. A Business Insider survey of recent graduates and newly minted employees indicates that up to 80% of them don't feel that their employer or recruiter accurately understands their skills, experience, and specialized talents. And as a result, they're not given meaningful opportunities where they can really make a difference. The point of all of this, my story, as well as the survey findings of young professionals, is that when you're seeking a new career opportunity or applying to an organization or business that you aspire to be a part of, they're not going to know your skills, your capabilities, and your ambitions intimately. Therefore, it is very important, it's extremely important to develop a solid professional profile, which includes your LinkedIn, your qualifications, your accreditations, and most importantly, your resume, which is why we are here today. A good resume will get you shortlisted among many other applicants, and maybe you'll get a chance to speak among hundreds and thousands of other shortlisted candidates. But a great resume will speak for you. It will make a strong case for why you're the person meant for this job. Now, saying all of this is quite easy. It's easier said than done, and it can be quite tricky and frustrating to draft the perfect resume. We have the amazing Miss Sangeeta Murthi Sahgal, who is a co-founder of Diversity Dialogs. And we have Mr. Piyush Srivastava, who has headed NIIT Group with 30 years of experience and has had ample opportunities to understand, set up, manage, and greatly contribute to their growth in the education and software industry. I welcome you both. Thank you for your time. I'm very eagerly looking forward to hearing whatever you have to say, all things CV related.
Okay. Thank you, Vinayak. Thanks a lot. And hi, Sangeeta. A very, very warm welcome on such a warm day to you on this amazing webinar which you are participating. So I actually thought of, asking, before I ask you any question, why don't we start with whatever you are doing right now? Because I know you for such a long time. I've seen that you have moved from one organization to another and contributed immensely. currently you are part of an organization called Diversity Dialogue. So before we start anything, can you tell us few lines about what is this Diversity Dialogue and what are you guys trying to do and why it is important, whatever you're doing?
Sure, sure. So first of all, Piyush, Vinayak, thank you for having me here today. I always find it very exciting and interesting to be a part of these kinds of Ask Me Anything sessions. So Piyush, I'm the co-founder of an organization called Diversity Dialogues. And what we do is we help organizations become more diverse and inclusive. We focus in four key areas of diversity and inclusion. So gender, sexual orientation and identity, generations, and people with disabilities. And when we work with organizations, we actually look at two areas, broad areas. The first being, how can we help you be more inclusive as an organization from a policy, practice, governance, strategy standpoint? And the second bucket really looks at saying, can we work with the underrepresented group for them to take charge of their careers and grow their careers? Because organizations may be inclusive, but if the people are not willing or able sometimes to just stand up and raise their hand, take a risk, try new things, experiment, learn, develop mindsets that help them, they're not going to grow. And what we want is organizations that are diverse and inclusive. So that's a quick brief of what we do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sangeeta, because as you know, Internship has been extremely fortunate to have your founder, Rosita Rabindra, as our advisor.
Yeah.
And this is the ethos and this is the principle we firmly believe, and that's what Internship is trying to do, is to reach out to uh, all groups into this society of young people and make them go through an experience where the diversity is respected, being channelized for a better tomorrow. So thank you so much, Sangeeta. Once again, Internship really welcomes you. And we are looking forward to have a great session on how to build a powerful resume. Because I'm very sure a lot of my young friends are always asking this question, especially the fresh graduates or fresh, coming out of colleges, and they are seeking job and they don't really, they have to really present something which is unique and make them presentable and let the recruiter get them attracted towards them. So first question to you, Sangeeta, and this is this in your whole career, how many resumes you would have scanned in your life?
It's going to be in the tens of thousands, probably, Piyush. I've done recruitment across multiple levels. Because I've been in, young growing organizations, I've done a lot of fresher resumes,
Okay.
scanning. So I would say it would probably be in tens of thousands.
That's quite a huge number. And I think statistically, if we were to break it down and divide it in all the years you've been professionally active, my next question would be, how much time are you able to give each resume that you're considering?
So now that's an embarrassing question because I'm going to have to be absolutely honest. Sometimes it's just a couple of seconds. So I look at a resume, it doesn't look professional enough. Sometimes it's written in fonts that are unreadable. I look at a resume and it's 4 pages long. I'm not even going to go through 4 pages, or it has bad English. The first 3 sentences are not grammatically okay. And I understand that some of us make grammar mistakes, and that's okay. I think spelling mistakes is the thing that gets me. Given this day and age where you have Word, it can fix all your spellings. So I would look at it and it's a reflection on me also. So let me be honest about it. I look at it and say, if this is a person who can't be straightforward,
right,
specific, precise. Just ensure that they've spell checked their resume. Then is this the kind of person I want in my organization?
I mean, honesty is appreciated here. Honesty is what we're looking for, because what you just said is a reality check for myself, for other young professionals who are drafting resumes and maybe not putting as much thought into them or care into them. So I hope it's not too much of a heartbreak for any of our young professionals attending the webinar. But then my next question that would follow is, as someone who has such vast, experience of looking at resumes and quickly filtering through them, how can you identify if you are going to either shortlist or reject a candidate in that time?
So the first I would do is I would really think about saying, I have a job description, right?
Right.
And what are the expertise or experience areas that I want in that job description? And is there a way for me to see it in a resume?
Okay.
Again, because you're going through so many hundreds of resumes, okay? People who worked on my team will remember giving me fat files full of resumes that they have shortlisted, and then I've gone through them to say, these are the ones we want to meet. I would do a map with the job description, definitely. I would do a map with prior experience, if that's something that's required. For someone who's a little more experienced, if they're not experienced, I would actually look at saying, does this person have something in addition to just school and college? Because what we want in the corporate world is we want more all-rounded professionals. So we actually do find it interesting if somebody has done drama or debating or worked, NCC, or they have a hobby that they've worked on or a project they've worked on. Those are the kinds of things that I would look for and I would find interesting. So it gets to the second stage. Now, getting to the third stage, I may still remove some, but it gets to the second stage.
That sounds incredibly thorough and comprehensive. And it's heartening to know that however much hard work a young person might put in their resume, it is reciprocated by your hard work in sorting through them and creating these different maps and having a very systemic way to go through them. And you also mentioned linking or finding something relevant to the job description in the resume that you're going through. So am I right in interpreting that every single job description that myself or someone else applies for will mean creating a new resume fitted to that job description?
Simple answer to that, I would say yes.
Okay.
So my recommendation would be, first create a resume for yourself, which is all encompassing, right? It covers everything that you believe is relevant for all the kinds of jobs that you are looking for. But when you submit a resume for a specific job, please pare it down. Truly, most people do not have time to read through paragraphs and paragraphs of writing, right? So if you can make it into bullets, have subheadings, highlight the words that are relevant to the job description, do that. And keep it shorter. One of the big fallacies, I was taught that way, and I've realized over a period of time it's a fallacy, is that the resume must cover everything. I learned later on in life that actually your resume mustn't cover everything, because you need the interviewer to want to ask you some questions, right?
Right.
You don't want to give them all the information. You want to kind of, let's put it as a teaser, right? A movie teaser. You want them to know that you're interesting, but you want them to also ask you questions when they interview you. So you
leave them wanting more.
Balance. Sorry?
Leave them wanting more.
Yes.
That's a tough brief, but it's a very good insight, because even the people that are recruiting at the other end are humans, and they tend to get bored very quickly. So my next question is for Piyush and Sangeeta. And because we've been talking a little bit about experience and listing relevant experience, this is a big one. And this occurred to me while I was picking vegetables next to my university one day, is that everyone talks about experience, and experience is vital on a resume. But myself being a recent graduate, how could I be expected to have experience? Maybe someone like myself or someone else who's just graduated or passed college, what do they do when it comes to portraying a good sense of work experience?
Okay, so Sangeeta, if I'm allowed to answer it first, so uh, so Vinayak, it's an interesting question, and possibly what you are talking about is to create talking points for a fresher, because
Okay.
I have done my MBA or I've done my BTech and I'm interested in volleyball. I've done theater. So these three things will attract how many questions from my interviewer is the issue, because that's what the fresher is all about. The fresher will have. So the
Right.
best thing for any fresher to create a powerful resume is to work on certain projects when they go for the while they are studying, when they go for the interview. Before that, they would have worked on certain projects, certain assignments, which are, of course, which are related to one way or other with the, let's say, put it this way, an organizational ecosystem. You could have, let's say you are a BTech person, and you, it's a computer science, uh, and you're going to work for a coding thing, but you have done a project on smart city, for example. It gives you an edge that you know what smart city is all about, you know, because you may not be coding something for smart city tomorrow itself, but you know something about what the smart city is all about. Example, you are uh, working, you are an MBA graduate, but you have, like you yourself gave the example, you are doing your studies in the business management, but you did a project which is related to food, crop, or eatable items.
Yep.
It gives you a talking point, and you do not, you sometime in life we discover, oh, this is what my interest is, this is my calling is. I will say that much, that enrich your resume with projects which make some sense or other in the ecosystem of the organization. But like you, I'm also eager to hear Sangeeta, who has done some tons of resumes and recruitment in her own life. Sangeeta, over to you.
Thanks, Piyush. So Vinayak, to your question, how important are projects in a resume? I think they're absolutely critical. Uh, because what do we want to see? We want to, A, like I said, see if this person is an all-rounder. B, do they show the initiative to try something outside the beaten path? Okay, and in India, the beaten path is you go to college, you study, you get good marks, finish. But that's not what we want, really. We want far more than that beaten path. So have you taken the initiative to do something new and different? When you've done something that is different, you've worked on a project, it could be something as simple as saying, I was on the organizing committee of my college festival, right?
Right.
Or I headed, that's what I did. I was the head of, the vice head of the Dramatic Society in college, and I've worked on our college festivals when I was at SRCC. It's important for me to talk about that, and also when I say that, to say what have I learned that will make me a better professional.
Okay.
So I would ask you, when you worked in the area of organic farming or farming, as the case may be, when you write it on your resume, are you able to put in one or two lines on what did you learn that makes you a better professional?
Mhm.
So it could be technical skills, it could be functional skills, it could be behavioral skills, it could be social skills, it could be any skills, but we have to be able to do that.
That sounds highly beneficial to me as well, because it would end up in me being looking forward to an interview situation
Yes.
or being excited to talk about myself and my experiences,
Mhm.
rather than just sitting there and presenting all my qualifications. Like, here you go.
And I remember when some of the most interesting conversations I've had are with people who put extracurricular activities or projects on their resume, and I've asked them, why did you do this? Why
Mhm.
does it interest you? Do you want to continue pursuing it? right? Why do you think it adds value? So I've experienced people who, told me that they wanted to learn how to fly and got a glider's pilot to, they headed at a very young age their neighborhood watch scheme. Now,
Right.
you may think that's not relevant, right? But it is, because it tells us about you as an individual. And don't only stick to the hobby area, right? And hobbies are important, but don't stick to only that. Think of projects that you could do with smaller organizations. You could do in your college. You could do in school.
Hmm.
I wish everybody in school is taught, in school, not college. We start at a young age, is taught on how to actually work on projects that are outside the standard school curriculum.
Plus, with the wealth of opportunities that we have for both voluntary and paid
Yes.
part-time work at the school level, at the college level, it's a matter of just opening your eyes,
Yeah.
taking a look.
Yeah.
I personally would just like to reiterate this very strongly, that I don't believe I got the opportunities that I did because I was in a university or because I was in Exeter or anywhere I would have been. They're everywhere. I had the same exposure and opportunities if I looked around in Noida, in Delhi, in Ghaziabad,
Hmm.
wherever it is. So it's really heartening to hear you say, and the thing I've taken from both what you said and what Piyush said is, it's not about doing the most. Well, if you can do the most, that's great. But it's about making the most of what you have done
Yeah.
and communicating it. And I appreciate those answers. I do have one more question though,
Mhm.
because this is from personally just scouring a lot of LinkedIn, recruitment posts and ads. And I feel like one buzzword or recruitment lingo that I've come across a lot is portfolios. And
Mhm.
amidst the whole kind of cloud of resumes, CV, cover letter, this is
Mhm.
a new thing that I really came across quite recently, portfolios. And I don't feel like I completely understand it. So I would like to direct this to Piyush and ask you, what's the deal with portfolios? Should I have one? How do I make one?
Okay, so I think I'll be repeating few things, but I will refrain myself into going to details. But yeah, like actually Sangeeta said it pretty put it very nicely, that when see the portfolio building is largely which are the areas which you touched, or which is the area which you dwelt into, which you can say that look, these are the things which I did. You know, take an example. When when an aspiring actor builds his or her portfolio, what do? Something first, they create a lot of photographs, but that's not the portfolio. Along with the photographs, when they go and they send it to any director or producer, they say that what are the kind of things they did. This theater, they acted in this, they did this role, they did comedy, they did serious roles, they did emotional roles, etc. They make it. That's what the portfolio is all about. It gives a peep in your understanding of the knowledge or skill which you have. But there is, the portfolio is useful only when you connect your portfolio with your learning, like Sangeeta was saying earlier. And that's very important. Like, I think Sangeeta gave a very nice clue, and which I really liked it. Like, you can say that I was the secretary of the drama society of my college. Full stop. Doesn't make more sense. But while being secretary, I mean, it is part of the portfolio which is not making any sense to anybody. But I mean, I'm not saying not making any sense. It gives you a flavor that you are a good communicator. That's why you are doing with the drama society. That's all. But if you write that I was, part of the drama society, I was secretary of the drama society, and I
Mhm.
learned how to communicate and interact with group of people, bring them together, and ensure that everybody is informed at the right time, etc. When the things are happening, give them the bring the directors to the actors and connect with them. I was acting as a coordinator between these activities, etc., etc. So if you find out, I created the I created the whole program flow, how to narrate the flow, how to bring the flow onto the stage, etc. So these are all your learning, which get translated into your learning of organizing, your learning of collating facts together, bringing something the uh, onto the fore in terms of, look, this is what you bring things together and do the whole job. So these are the kind of things you do it. So portfolio in nutshell is creating all the experiences together which make you learn something and you're able to talk about that. I will say that.
Wonderful. So it sounds like a portfolio is something to work on, and it seems like a very helpful thing from what you said to supplement my job application or just add it along to a resume and make a positive impact and give a more complete picture. Again, that fact of being all-rounded, like Sangeeta said. I'm going to quickly take a few minutes here to get into some question and answers that we've had from people attending this webinar live.
Okay.
And I would request everyone to please stay with us. We are going to get into very critical do's and don'ts of resumes in the next section of this webinar. And we're just going to take a few minutes to answer a few questions. So please do stay with us. The first one is actually not a question at all. It's a compliment, but I really liked it. So I'm going to start with it. And it's Simon Coleman who says, definitely honesty is quite helpful in today's topic. And he thanks us for the insight. Thank you so much, Simon. We also have a question from Pragya. Pragya has asked, being a first-year law student, what should I include in my resume? So, Sangeeta, could I direct that question to you?
Sure. So Pragya, first-year law student who is looking at possibly doing an internship somewhere or doing some work over the holidays, my suggestion would be talk about your areas of interest and why do they interest you, which is a reason for why you want to be doing an internship or a project in that area. If you've done anything that's similar, right? And I'm just going to take an example. So let's say you want to actually specialize in criminal law, right? You want to be really specific about why you're interested in criminal law. What is the work that you've done in criminal law? If you've written for your law magazine or you have a blog, that becomes a part of your portfolio, what Piyush was talking about. Blogs are great place. Vlogs are great places or ways to create your portfolio. I would add that in there and say, my portfolio of work includes reviews about criminal cases, your thoughts, you may have a blog, whatever it is, or articles you've written. That's what you would want, right? For you to then be able to send this resume to a bunch of folks to say, this is the kind of work that I would like to do for you. Whether it's paid or unpaid is besides the point at this point, right? If it's paid, you're lucky. But I know in the legal profession, a lot of these things are really unpaid for many, many years.
Thank you for your answer. That was quite helpful. We also have another straightforward yet very meaningful question from Nishant Raj. Nishant has asked, should we write good vocabulary words or simple words in the resumes that we are drafting?
Please, simple words. Okay, you do not want the person who's reading your resume to have to read a word and wonder, okay, do I need to look at a dictionary? Because at that point, your resume is going into the dustbin.
Okay.
If the person who's going to read your resume can't understand it, it's going into the dustbin, right?
I can only, Sangeeta, add that unless you are applying to Shashi Tharoor, you should better write a simple English.
Even to Shashi Tharoor, I would assume that he would want to read simple English from somebody who's going to write to him for a role.
I'm glad you clarified that. It's quite a simple and effective answer. And I'm glad I was going to call Nishant's question pertinent, but instead of that, I said meaningful. I'm glad I went with that. Our next question is from an anonymous attendee. And the question states, I request if some light could be shed for professionals having 15 plus years of experience who are planning to make a transition from a current profile to another profile. So this seems like a question about changing industries or kind of a career shift, which we'll also come to later. But if you'd like to respond to this now, we could kind of take this question now as well.
So my recommendation for a person who's moving from, let's assume, one functional area to another or an industry to another is when you write your resume, look at the thread through the resume being such that it lists your expertise areas and how it relates to the new area. Okay. So for example, and I'll take my personal example, I moved out of ITES into healthcare, right? I didn't even work on healthcare projects when I was in ITES, but my resume when I moved really looked at saying, what have I learned as a part of my role in technology, in technology run companies, that I believe I will be able to. So what are my expertise areas, my domain skills, my knowledge that I will be able to extrapolate and use within the healthcare industry, right? And you have to be able to do that mapping for others. Don't assume that others will be able to determine that. One of the big mistakes that happens, especially when you're mid-career, is that you assume that they should be able to tell you what's good for you, right? Nobody is going to really do that. We have to remember that the days of having somebody else tell us, oh, I think this is what you need to do in your career are pretty much dead and gone. You need to define it. Let them tell you it's not okay. Because if you ask for it, let's say you ask for something that's dramatically different and you get even half of it, great. You've moved towards changing your industry or your function.
Wonderful. That's quite an interesting insight. And I must also compliment all of our attendees today for having such a healthy incoming flow of questions. I'm almost drowning in them at this
Lovely.
point. But if we could take a few more, would you like us to take a few more in this part of the session? I can.
Sure.
So our next question is from Preetham Sinha, who has asked, Preetham has told us he's in a situation where he's an experienced professional. And a few days ago, Preetham got a call from a third-party HR recruiter for a profile in which he doesn't have working experience. Then he got a call from the concerned organization for the same role, scheduling an interview. And Preetham says he's confused and is asking what is to be done in this situation.
Preetham, is that a role that you want to do? Is my question. If it's a role that you want to do, great. By the way, sometimes it's an organization you want to join and not necessarily the role, right? And let's accept that. There are many companies that we admire from afar, and getting an opportunity to work in those companies, whatever the role, doesn't matter, because we have the confidence that once we get in, we'll be able to make our own path, right? So if it's a company that you admire and you want to be a part of, if it's a role that you really want, jump right in. And I tell this to lots of folks, more in when we work in diversity dialogues to a lot of underrepresented groups, is take the chance. What's the worst that can happen? 1 year later, it hasn't worked out. It makes no difference when you have a 50, 60-year career. I think I'm going to be working productively till I'm 80, 85, till the day I die. So a couple of years here and there that haven't worked out okay, or a couple of choices on roles that haven't worked out okay, doesn't matter. As long as I've learned from it, I've fixed it, and I ensure I don't make the mistake again, right? I would say jump right in.
That was a very motivating response to that. And I'm definitely motivated. And I hope it was motivational for Preetham as well. And it comes down to, I completely agree, doing your own research as well about any opportunities that you get. And if you're a good fit and the organization is a good fit, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
It's quite a positive take on it. We also have a question from Akanksha Sharma. And Akanksha has asked, talking about projects at the school level, I have done 3 major projects. So should I include those in my resume?
Akanksha, I don't know if this is the first time you're applying for a job or you're in mid-career. So just remember, when you're applying first time or at junior levels, say that you've done 3 projects and that they were big enough, right? Don't make them, if they're small projects, you may not want to have that. But when you're in mid-career, you may want to just do a 1-line mention versus detailing it out. So it's actually deciding based on the level of your career, the role that you want to apply for, what is the detail that you want in your resume. which is why I said first create the whole big thing. Because from there to pare it down to what you want based on the job is easier for you to do, right? So let's say that some of your school projects were large, right? You've raised funds for a big social cause or a social event in your school, or you ran one of your school extracurricular groups, which is large enough. Sure, talk about it. But if you've got 15, 18 years of experience, you should have experienced things that are big enough for you to talk about versus these school projects, right? So just, it depends on what level you're at.
And just one more quick question from Nishant again, who had earlier asked us about vocabulary and what kind of words to use. He's also additionally asked, if I have done any course apart from my core, how would I present it in my resume? I believe this is about educational qualifications.
Oh, okay. Just have it. So just put it as educational qualifications.
Right.
Right. This is like I did a BA in economics, and I got certificates on Pascal from IIT Delhi. Right. I did a program, plus I did something else. So it's just a part of your educational qualifications. You don't need to distinguish one from the other.
Okay. Plus, I think the more the merrier. I mean, it will lead to a more well-rounded and impressive profile. Awesome. So we have quite a few more questions here and growing. However, I do get the feeling that as we proceed with the remaining topics to be covered today in the webinar, quite a few people will find tidbits of knowledge and useful information from what we are going to talk about. So I feel like let's get back to some of those resume related topics, and we'll pick up more questions towards the end.
Before you start, Vinayak, I just want to take 2 short minutes of yours.
Sure.
Because I was looking at questions which people were raising. So I just want to answer. I think that I found two questions very important to address it right now.
Sure.
So one person he has written that I had a gap in my job due to personal reasons. So what do I do with that? That was a question. So my simple take on this is never fudge any fact, always be honest. That's one thing which I would like to advise here. It is important for the person who asked this question need to know that. And the second question is, Sangeeta, maybe you would like to answer that question. That one person has written that I am working in a function and I actually moved to another function. So how do I move that? So I would like you to answer, only I would like to write a bit of it, that if you're very clear that if you want to, let's say, for example, you are in finance and want to move to HR, for example. So if you're very clear about that, then do a little preparation for that. You know, do put certain little bricks in front of you to build that career where you want to be. Do some course, do some project, show some within your own function, show certain inclination to do certain finance. That's my take. But would like to listen to you that how do you respond before we hand over to Vinayak.
Okay. So Piyush, this person wants to know, how do I reflect that in my resume, or how do I make the move?
How do I make the move? That's the question.
Move. Ask for it.
Yeah, no, move. How do make the move? How do I make the move and make my resume fit for the next job?
Okay. Yeah. So I thought I answered that in a little bit. Make the move. So let me answer the first one. How do you make the move? Just ask for it. You know, I started my role as a COBOL programmer. Some of you won't even know what COBOL is, but let me tell you, I started my life as a COBOL programmer. I then moved into, well, I have to remember the sequence, training. I've done product management. I've done systems audit. I've done marketing. I've done a sales role. I've done an operations role. I've done a P&L role. I've moved into HR. Okay. Some people, when they see my resume, get very confused, saying, so what is your area of expertise? And that's going to happen if you change functions. But if you can build a cogent story as to why and what can you bring to the table, because you have this varied experience, it works. So there's a line that I use now after not now, okay, my prior role when I moved into HR is to say, my background in operations and managing a P&L will help me ensure HR has a seat at the table when business decisions are being made. That's it. That's one line that has actually knitted the varied experience together. So whoever asked this question, if you're looking at, different functions that you've worked in, and you have to think about what are those 2 or 3 things that help you knit your experience together and convert it into a simple statement.
Yeah.
And if recruiters will carefully listen and examine to everything you're saying, which often they will because they are senior and experienced in what they do, they will pick up the pieces of every single industry specialization that you've mentioned and understand how it fits into what you're applying for.
Correct.
I also,
I may just answer the other question. Someone asked this question on gap, and I agree with Piyush. One is don't fudge. A. 2, my suggestion, don't be apologetic about it.
right.
Life happens. Okay, people have family emergencies, accidents, people have babies, people have various kinds of things. Life happens. We do not need to apologize for having breaks in our career.
However, having been on the other side of the situation,
Yeah.
being in the position to potentially offer a job to someone, would you say that a career break realistically impacts your resume shortlisting? Does it raise questions?
So let me put it as this. If you'd asked me this question maybe about 15, 20 years ago, the answer would be yes. If you're asking me the question now, the answer would be no.
Especially after COVID.
Not just after COVID. I think people are more conscious of the fact that people take breaks for various reasons. Okay.
Right.
Also, research is showing that both men and women who are entering the workforce today value flexibility equally. Both want to be able to take time off from jobs to do other things because they have such varied interests. And
right.
And as organizations have realized that somebody wants to take a gap year and go roam the world, that's okay. But you should have a nice way of talking about what you learned in that one gap year. How does it make you a better professional?
Great.
Right?
So explain what you have to, and you don't need to bother explaining what you don't have to explain.
Yeah, you don't. Everyone respects the fact that you may want to take time off. That's perfectly okay.
Wonderful. You had also mentioned in answering one of Piyush's questions that when you're changing a field, you talk to us about your beautifully crafted sentence, and you talk to us about just having your different relevant backgrounds and everything that you've done in different divisions or say functions within a business on display in your professional profile. But then the question I had in respect to that was, suppose you're applying for a new function and you're shifting from accounts to management or HR, something wildly different. Are you in a position of weakness there that you don't have relative work experience to show for that new function which you want to be a part of?
So let's put it as this: if you're working in the organization, you've already established your personal brand, okay?
Right.
And your personal brand is not just your expertise and functional knowledge; it's a lot of other things. It's your industry knowledge, it's your domain, it's your soft skills, ability to get along with people.
Okay.
All of those hold you in good stead when you want to move. And I'll give you a very simple example. I had someone in my team who used to do compensation and benefits. Okay, a very typical HR thing. I actually had a request from the person who headed finance, a CFO, at one point of time saying, I'd like her to move into finance. And I told him, I said, look, she is a comp and benny person. She's not a finance person. And he said, no. Her attention to detail, her ability to understand drivers, her ability to ensure that work gets done, even when it's high pressure, are the things that I value in finance. So I'd like her to move to this role. She didn't move to that role because I asked her, is this an area of interest? It wasn't, but that's what you want. If you want to change functions, establish your brand as a professional, which is over and above just those simple functional skills.
Great. And a good resume is the calling card of your personal brand as well.
Yes, it is.
Everything you want people to know about you and the way you work and the work you have done
That's right.
on, preferably 1-2 sheets of paper, which brings me to my next question as well. Would you like to comment on the length of resumes? And I know that you mentioned, when we were talking earlier, that you've received resumes which are 3 pages long, 4 pages long, and more. And people feel compelled to maybe put more on there when they have years of experience. So how can one control the length of a resume?
Okay, so I have, for myself, I have a brief bio, which is 2 paras. I have a 1-pager, and I have a detailed one, which is max 3 pages. I keep trying to get it. I've got it down now to about 2 pages. So my take, just try and make it a single page, and that's it. Truly, nobody has the attention span. Think of yourself, right? Do you have the attention span to read through 3 pages? When you're going to go through 30 or 40 resumes for a role, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So choose what you want to write. Put it into 1 page as far as possible. Please don't do the putting it in 8 point so that you can fit more on a page. Okay, that's happened to me, and I'm like, listen, I need glasses to look at a video on my laptop. Can you imagine me reading 8-point Arial narrow so that they could fit in more information? Don't do that, right? So
design and layout and graphics and colors matter to you, or having a photo or not having a photo?
Having a photo, not having a photo doesn't matter. Truly, unless you're an actor and people or a model, then you would have a portfolio. But truly, how you look shouldn't. The bias still exists, and sometimes it does play a role. But at the resume stage, you don't need to do that. It's a professional resume. Stick to black and white. Why would you need colors and stuff like that? I know a lot of students, I've seen a lot of MBA graduates who've been told how to make these wonderful presentations with razzmatazz and stuff. And I look at it and say, can you get to the real meat of your presentation versus all this razzmatazz? Choose the standard stuff.
Right.
Roman fonts, Times New Roman, or Verdana, most common, 11 or 12 point. That's it. Use bold and underline if you want to highlight sections. That's it. Don't get into all of that. Try and make it bullet points as far as possible. Bullet points are easier to read.
Although I must say, I would like to get Piyush's take on this as well, because I know for a fact that he is someone who appreciates creativity in different media. And I refuse to believe that, more of these sort of zany resumes, because now in my personal experience, just before I ask you, Piyush, I do have to give a shout out to a lot of online services such as Tick Resume and a lot of these free and paid services, which will not do anything for your resume. You're writing it all yourself. But if you want to make it visually engaging, there are services out there that will do that. So I have to ask Piyush as well, what is your take? Simple or a little more creative and, with flair?
Well, I mean, the answer is exactly like it will reflect what Sangeeta has said, because in my own experience of recruiting people, it is a fact that when you're dealing with so many resume, you want a story to be told straightforward, simple.
Okay.
And I need to understand what person is, what are the things which person has done, and what person has got potential, looking at whatever kind of things the person has done, and that the story is there. But there are certain roles where you're looking for a creativity. Let's say, for example, I had the opportunity of recruiting 2 people for our design studio because we were setting up a design studio in the organization where I used to work, because they were supposed to create a lot of content. So there were couple of most of the resumes were into the paper form with like you mentioned, a lot of color and a lot of play with the design part and all that, because that was a design thing. But I still remember that receiving one resume, which was, it sits in my mind, which was, I was sent an email and saying that click that link for my resume, and only one line, and I clicked that. So it was a 1.5 minute video about the person. So it was called V resume. So that was the first time I learned that word called video resume and all that. But
Right.
I was impressed with that because the role was of that kind of function, which was setting up the design studio. So I liked that kind of thing. But I will, largely speaking, I will tend to agree 100% what Sangeeta said. Keep the story simple.
Right.
Keep the story uncomplicated. Come straight and come direct. That's it.
In the same vein, may I quickly ask Sangeeta as well, what is the wackiest or most non-traditional resume that you've received, which didn't immediately get thrown out, which wasn't traditional, but it still had everything to the point and it was differently done?
I don't recall a wacky resume, in all
Okay.
honesty. What I do recall is people who've sent me a straightforward resume,
Right.
which is just a para. Okay, so yeah, direct marketing. I was looking for somebody to do marketing for a B2C business, a lot of digital marketing. So it was just 2 paras, and the rest was a portfolio of all the work he'd done.
Okay.
Okay, and it's portfolio work that he'd done in FMCG, and it ended with why the portfolio of work he's done in FMCG will work for contact lenses. Now,
Okay.
that I found really interesting, right? So, but it was that cover note was that two brief lines or paras, let me say 2 paras, that will make me go and read the rest of the stuff.
Great. So just to kind of pass on what I've heard and understood from both of you to our attendees is there may be a little bit room for experimentation, but get your basics sorted first and get the meat of it, the content, the information, everything that will get you hired on there. And then after that, if you want to experiment and take your chances with being wacky, it might end up in front of someone who appreciates it or someone who doesn't have time for it. But maybe at the resume stage, it's safer to play your stronger cards of experience and relevant content.
Yes.
So I would also lastly like to come to Sangeeta and ask you about the main do's and don'ts that you'd like anyone attending this webinar to take away with them about resume building.
Okay, so first, never fib. If you
Okay.
know something, say you know it. If you don't know it, don't say it. Okay. A lot of people try and say, I have a working knowledge or a basic knowledge in XYZ agile design, when they don't really know anything about it. So don't fib. There's no use trying to do that. When you get caught out, your integrity is on the line, everything else gets thrown away. So never fib. When you're structuring your resume, definitely put your name and contact details. Right up front, put it in the header if you have to put it. Simple name, contact details, mobile number, email ID. Recommendation, please get professional sounding email IDs. Right. Don't have lifeisbeautiful@gmail.com. Okay? Or Donald Duck. I've seen all these kinds of resumes. You know, when you look at it, you say, okay, is this person really serious or not? So ensure that you have a professional email ID. Definitely have a summary. So that first paragraph should really talk about your experience, your expertise areas. Why do you want this job? Or what makes it so exciting for you, right? And that should be the little summary. That one paragraph should make someone want to go on to the rest. So it's like opening bigger and bigger windows into your life. But the first one has to be attractive enough, right? For someone to delve into it. Definitely give a list chronologically, latest first, of your roles that you've done, right? If you're newly joining an organization, then your summary could be larger, talking about why you want to join the organization, what have you learned, right? And why you would be good for the role. But talk about your experience. Talk about the impact you've had. You know, it's a waste of paper for you to say, I was an HR trainee in XYZ company and I was responsible for putting together payroll records. You know, that's a job description. Tell me what was the impact of your role. Did you do it zero defect, month on month for 36 months? Great. That one line is enough, right? Versus listing. So don't list them as job responsibilities, list them as the impact or the value you've delivered, right? You could then talk about, you know, projects you've done, or internships you've had, educational qualifications. That's it. People do things like put their passport number or Aadhaar card number on a resume. Not needed. When the company needs it, they'll ask for it. Not needed, right? Things like languages spoken. Now, if the role requires you to speak multiple languages, mention it. But if the role doesn't require it, again, you're using up space giving irrelevant information. So definitely cover your skills and expertise, and mention the level, right? So if you're proficient in something, say you're proficient in it. If you have an advanced skill, say advanced skill. If you're a beginner, say beginner. So
Great.
that people know how to plot you.
Lovely. Thank you for your insightful notes and knowledge on all things related to building a great resume. I would at this point also like to hand over to Piyush ji for talking to us about accreditations, qualifications, especially if you're a young professional, a recent graduate, the importance of having substantial portfolios and internships under your belt as you build your resumes and professional profile.
Yeah, so I will say that. So first, let me just say there are a lot of questions which has still actually individually not being answered because of the time constraint. But I can assure each one of them that we are keeping that repository of question with us, and my colleagues will reach out to Sangeeta, will talk to her, and we would like to respond back to each one of you of the questions which you have asked. And if anyone is interested to look at the uh, video recording of this, they might possibly ask our coordinators. So I wanted to say that in the beginning itself. So answer to your question, Vinayak, I will only say like this, that look, uh, you actually building a resume, and while you build the resume and you write the resume, so Sangeeta has given huge amount of inputs, do's and don'ts were interesting enough, and I do not want to repeat it, but it is such a minute and important details for all of us to understand that, you know, uh, road to success at the rate 21gmail.com is a, I mean, you have to understand that has to be proper email address, piyush.srivastava@gmail, rather than all these funny things. These are the, from that till the end, Sangeeta has explained everything. I will simply add only one small thing, that while you're working towards your career, your resume, especially for the fresher I'm talking about, your resume actually is largely your aspiration, where you want to take yourself in your career. Like Sangeeta said it very nicely, that if you're a fresh person, write down in the paragraph that what you want to do in professionally, what you want to achieve, and why do you think that you can actually achieve, what are those small insights which you have. Imagine writing a philosophical paragraph like Sangeeta suggested, or writing a paragraph which is coming directly from an experience, maybe shorter experience, maybe one person has done 2 months, 3 months, 4 months project. Now imagine that you're going to work into a HR function, and you write that you have done a project while working with old age home people and interacting with them, and creating a summary report of what support older people are looking from the younger generation. Imagine the impact of such project to the person who is going to to take your interview in an HR department, because he knows or she knows that you have experienced firsthand an empathical environment, and you understand the sensitivities of somebody who doesn't have few things and how do you deal with them, kind of thing.
Right.
Especially there are many technical subjects. You are applying for a manufacturing environment, but you have done a project into, let's say, auto-driven cars, self-driven cars. Now, this gives a view to the manufacturing segment that this person comes from a background, comes from an understanding that what remote functions are and how this person is going to be useful for us in the future. So these are some smart things to understand, and these small things has to be added in your experience before you start your career, because that's an old story of chicken and egg. I don't have an experience, so I don't get a job. I don't get a job, so I don't get an experience. Build that in your resume. I will say that.
Great. I think it's more of a question than a story of where do I get this mythical experience from then, before any full-on sort of professional full-time opportunities. Are there avenues, are there opportunities where one can do such meaningful projects like you mentioned?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I tend to agree on everything what you're saying. It's right. Absolutely.
Great.
My take would be, Vinayak, go out and look for it. Okay.
Okay.
As a kid, find everyone that your parents know and your elder brothers and siblings know and the elder people in your neighborhood know, and say, this is the kind of project I want to do. Be shameless. What's the worst that can happen? Someone's going to say no. So
Right.
what? Can you imagine what would happen if someone said yes? Right? I'd like to do it. And also look at internships as a way of also determining, is this an area of interest or not? Many times when, we have these rose-rimmed spectacles when we're in college and school, and we think that it's all hunky-dory. We realize later on that this is not an area. So I would say fill your life with projects and internships in school and
Yes.
college. Okay? Do them in different areas. It's perfectly okay in a resume to say, I tried out these 3 different things. And when somebody asks you, okay, so why are you applying for X and not Y? Say, I tried it out and I didn't like it. It wasn't
Completely
something
agree.
that I liked. So do as much as you can for you to prepare yourself for the career that you want.
I think these internships and part-time jobs especially are the healthiest and most timely reality checks that a young person can get going forward in their
So
professional
I would
careers.
like to add one thing here, Vinayak. I mean, just to take from here, all of us need to understand, especially the younger lot who is right now listening to this, they must understand what the future is. The 9 to 5 job is gone.
Yeah.
It is not going to stay. All the younger lot need to understand that. Now the story of me packing my lunch, my wife giving me lunch, and my taking my scooter or my car or cycle, going to my office, sitting down my desk and coming back at 5:45, taking my train or bus or car or scooter and coming back home has gone, finished. Finito. Now, the gig economy jobs are going to be, as you very rightly said, you used a word, that small projects, and you've got to be improvising there, in a sense that now the time has come where one man can do multiple jobs, because COVID has proved that physical office is just here in our minds.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in reality. You can work at any place, anywhere. Imagine, till yesterday, you had an office in Delhi. You are recruiting either people from Delhi or people who are agreeing to travel to Delhi and settle there. Today, I mean, either from Czechoslovakia or Yugoslovakia or Turkey or UK, everybody can be working with us. Everybody can be working with Diversity Dialogue if they chose to be, because that's what it is. That's what it is. So people should understand that, as Sangeeta was saying, I am taking the leaf from there. Multiple experiences, and they are not going to go waste. Explore everything. Go a little deep dive where you don't know where your calling is from. And all of us have seen successful stories. Don't we know that Habib Tanvir, the famous dramatist, was actually, he went to UK to study chartered accountancy. He studied CA, but he became a theatrist. There are hundreds and thousands of stories like this. You imagine a cricket player and who is a master of chess, but he chose to play cricket and is such a good spin bowler. So all of us need to understand where our calling lies. So keep experimenting with them. Be ready mentally that you might be there. A time is going to come very soon in our future that you'll be working on 5-6 assignments or 5-6 different things. And you should be ready to do that, because you do not know which technology will die tomorrow and which new technology will just come up tomorrow.
Wonderful. That's a great message. Sure. That creates quite a high pressure environment to sort through 36 questions that we have at the moment to find right. Okay, so we have one quick question from Sanjana Tiwari, who has said, I'm a master's student in statistics, but I was more into sports, NCC, NSS, and extracurriculars. Is it okay to add more of extracurriculars than co-curricular activities in my resume?
I'm not sure I understand co-curricular versus extracurricular. I think what she's talked about being sports, NCC, I consider them co-curricular. It makes her a full human being. Her interests, Sanjana, your interests in sport is as important as your interest in statistic. Okay. The other thing also is when you talk about your life as a sports person, talk about how that makes you a better individual. Right? As a sports person, you're competitive. You like aggressive goals. You're able to work with teams very well. You take failure in your stride. Use those words to your advantage, right? And then look for what is the role that you want with statistics as a background. I don't know what kinds of roles you're looking at, but I would mention them, definitely. But I'd also mention why they make me a better professional,
Great.
a better human being.
We also have a question from Shikha Gupta, who said, I am a CA fresher. I have not done an internship from any big firm. I don't have much experience. What should I do to make my resume attractive?
I assume that while you were doing your CA, you did an internship somewhere. It may not have been a large firm. Don't worry if it's not a large firm. We all assume that the reputation of a large firm translates to our reputation. Okay? It doesn't. So if you've done some significant work with a small firm, talk about it. Again, what have you learned in that process? And remember, with a small firm, you probably had more varied experience than someone who is an intern in a large firm. Use that to your advantage. To talk about all the various things you did as a CA intern in the small firm that others who worked in or interned with a large firm may not have had the opportunity to do. That makes you stand out.
I think we also have a very good question from Rohit Rana, who has asked, how should we showcase our soft skills in our resume when applying for a fresh graduate engineering role?
Rohit, I'm not sure what the soft skill is, but let's assume it's communication. You need to be able to talk about why communication makes you better as a team player. And I don't know what you want to do as an engineer either, but you want to be able to showcase that, right? So when you say good communication skills, your resume should read like a story because that tells me you have good communication skills. If you think that your verbal skills are great, publish a couple of vlogs on what you see is interesting or new and different in the engineering space, right? Use those, put those links in, put it in your LinkedIn, put the link in your resume. So there are ways to showcase soft skills.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking the additional time to answer the question, Sangeeta. I'm sure it was much appreciated. As I mentioned, we do have quite a few more. So I would urge all the attendees in today's webinar to register or Internshape, and please do follow the social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. They're everywhere, LinkedIn as well. And you'll be sure to come upon a recorded copy of this webinar, where hopefully you can get in touch with the team to get your questions answered if we weren't able to answer them today. And thank you so much, Piyush, Sangeeta. It was very, very enlightening, illuminating, and helpful. And it has made me want to take another look at my resume, which I haven't touched for 6 months. But I'm sure all of our attendees today benefited from the intense sort of experience that you shared. And thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to all the attendees for joining us today as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Lovely.
Thank you.
All
Thank
the
you very
best.
much, Vinayak and Sangeeta. Thank you.
Wonderful. Have a good evening to everyone.
Thank you.